Hello, how are you? I'm Matthew. Thanks for making space for me and my guest today on the first weekend of spring. Paddy Quinn is the Deputy Mayor of Miramichi, New Brunswick, and a board member with Miramichi Housing Solutions Incorporated. Paddy was on the show in early December, back today with an exciting update about the Out of the Cold shelter. Tremendous community response. We also discuss a very successful Out of the Cold fundraiser and how Miramichi Housing Solutions Incorporated plans to assist the community of Bathurst, New Brunswick, help the unhoused. I hope you take something away from this 36-minute conversation. Paddy, welcome back to Truth from the Booth.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for having me once again.
Now, before we get into a lengthy conversation, I ask this of all my guests. What is your mental health on a scale of 1 to 10, like on this first full weekend of spring?
Yeah, good question. I remember this from the last time. Given the circumstances surrounding the topic we're about to talk about, Matt, I'm heading more in the right direction. Some of the weight has been lifted, if you will allow. So I'll go 7 out of 10 right now. And as you mentioned, we have managed to survive yet another northern New Brunswick winter here up in Miramichi.
Is there still snow on the ground there?
There is still snow on the ground, yes. I would suspect within the next week or so, 7 to 10 days, it'll be all gone.
The ice in the river, is that still there?
Really interesting you would ask me that today. We were talking about fishing, of course, the famous fishing of the Miramichi River. The river opens on the 15th of April for fishing season. But the ice is still in the river right now. Would you and I want to walk across it? Likely not, but it is still there. It has not run, as we would say around here.
I lived, born and raised in Woodstock, New Brunswick, right along the St. John River. And out of all the years, I was there till I was 26. And I never, ever saw the ice go out. In all my years, never saw the ice go out. Like physically see it like ripple and break apart. It's unfortunate. That would have been something to see.
It's funny you would say that. So that's a big thing around here, of course, when it finally lets go, as we locals like to say. And up in the headwaters, which actually, Matt, the headwaters of the Miramichi River is towards your neck of the woods. The headwaters of the Miramichi River up Juniper Way. And I just happened to be there about 2 springs ago and finally saw it for the first time myself at the soon-to-be age of 49. So I'm like yourself. I didn't see it as often as I would have liked to.
Wow, amazing. I think my mother has seen it multiple times, but on my to-do list, on my bucket list. Okay, let's get into 7 out of 10. Wonderful. Glad to hear. Let's get into this, because when we spoke in early December, we were talking about the Out of the Cold shelter. You were going through some rezoning. So tell my audience about the public hearings, how the council voted, some community feedback. I want to give you as much time as possible, because the outcome is exactly what needs to happen in every community. So I'll give you the floor to explain, Paddy.
Well, first, I'm glad you acknowledged that, and I'm glad to be here to have this opportunity. So I'll give you the background before we get to voting night and the successful conclusion of the arduous project. So we had a public hearing. Now, if you're familiar with the way local governance works, especially here in New Brunswick, Matt, you're in Halifax now. I don't know how it works there, but I will speak to how it works in New Brunswick. Every time there is a zoning change, there has to be some public consultation, especially one as hot button as this. And there were many letters of objection. Now, the reality, the way the legislation is laid out, all we need, and I'll use you as the example if you will allow, Matt. So let's say Matt writes a letter of objection. Just because we receive one letter of objection, that opens the floor to everyone. But in this case, because it's such a touchy subject, we had many letters of objection. And I might mention, too, we had many letters of support, and I'm sure you'll ask me about that down the road. But so we have the public hearing, and I'll be very honest and upfront, Matt. It was one of those moments where I wasn't really looking forward to walking into it. I'm certainly very conscious of my role at council, very conscious of my role with Miramichi Housing Solutions, and I love my community. And this is one of those rooms that we didn't know how it was going to go, truth be told. And I think because we were out of our comfort zone, the anxiety level rose for me personally, because we were not in council chambers, because we were expecting a bigger crowd. We had to rent an adjacent hall, community hall, that would probably hold, 250, 300 for wedding or conference purposes, which is largely why that building is used now. So we get there, and the neighborhood adjacent to where the out of the cold shelter, which was seeking the rezoning, was there lock, stock, and barrel. Now, the net result over the course of time, and I would say in my mind's eye, Matt, those usually start at 6 p.m., so I'd say it finished by 9. So over the course of the following 3 hours after start time, it was very interesting. And, of course, the letters of objection allowed the public to speak. But by the time...
Were those
Yeah.
letters that were submitted, were they read out loud?
They have to be. The great question. The clerk has to read them into the public accord. So yes, if there were 10 letters, they had to be read. Very good question. 100%.
No, I want to ask, what was the difference between the substance of the letters that were written and mailed in or handed in, as opposed, did people have the opportunity to take a podium and speak as well?
Yeah. Okay. So we get to hearing night. The letters of objection allow the public the podium opportunity to answer your question. So yes. So there we go. Here we go. And over the course of the 3 hours that ensued following start time at 6 p.m., Matt, it was very interesting to see a community kind of embrace what was about to potentially happen. It was interesting to watch them listen to the folks from Miramichi Housing Solutions because there are letters of objections and an opportunity to speak against. There was certainly an opportunity for those gathered in the hall to speak for. And I don't want to sound like a used car salesman here. It's not like Miramichi Housing Solutions was trying to sell their wares to the neighborhood. It wasn't like the neighborhood was trying to sell their wares to the Miramichi Housing Solutions folks. But it was interesting to note, and I hope you can appreciate this, and I hope anyone listening to, especially in my position in any other community, will take something away from this, and I hope it's this. Over the course of time, I look back upon it objectively, it was as though they started to solve their own problems on a path forward in a roundabout way. It wasn't the fire and brimstone I was expected. All of a sudden, neighbors were getting up going, we would prefer this. And Miramichi Housing Solutions, we will say, we will consider this. And we're not against what you're about to do, but we are against this, this, and this. And over the course of time, Matt, by the time we left there at 9, it was awesome to see. We walked away from there with 4 or 5, maybe 6 items that were somewhat agreed upon that would be super attainable. There was nothing there that you would go, oh, we got to do that. All were within reach, and everyone left the hall. Fast forward a few weeks, you did mention in the onset before we got rolling here that you would watch the actual meeting of the vote, and the vote went through, and all set up there for you to hop back in.
In that moment, in that 3-hour span when you were watching your community come together, what pride did you have in your community in that moment?
Well, a couple of things. I don't want to get too cliche or campaigny on this, but I think there's an old saying that when the peasants are left to their own devices, the peasants do quite well. And that was one of those moments where they just kind of met somewhere in the middle going, look, we would love to have a nice tree line here so there's some privacy. No problem. We prefer that you don't burn open encampment fires or have anyone staying outside. No problem, because having the shelter would be the opposite of staying outside and burning a campfire to stay warm. So they started to find their own solutions. So pride, it was nice to see the compassion from both sides. It was nice to see people step up and say, who were within the vicinity, saying, look, we don't even notice you're there right now, let alone the ones that said, we just don't want you there. And it's that whole, you use the term, you hear the term, and it's a well-used term, the whole NIMBYism. Yeah. I don't want to say it went away, but it got relaxed. And the end result of the walk away, and that you watched the vote, and I apologize for that. Those are a bit long and hard to watch sometimes. They're boring. They're dry. But if you'll recall from having watched it, one of the takeaways, one of the walkaways, call it what you want, was that there would be a neighborhood advisory committee that would sit and liaise with Miramichi Housing Solutions, and there would be a free-flowing, ongoing dialogue between the two neighbors, for lack of better.
Okay, so let's talk about inside of this shelter.
Mm-hmm.
You have I'm just going through some of your social media. 52 individuals are using the shelter and its services. So and again, congratulations on this community pulling together. We're going to talk a little bit later about taking over the operation in Bathurst, New Brunswick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that in a bit. But just back to now that the shelter is secured, it's in place. Talk about the services for the individuals who are going to be using the shelter.
So the room occupancy rate of our shelter is 90.94% day over day. We have 59 unique individuals using our out of the cold shelter, and that number translates into 712 bed nights used. And the average bed night use is 6.9 per night. Now, we have some room there. We have some room at the inn, so to speak, some vacancy. So I'd love to tell you we're full every night for all the right reasons and getting folks into where they need to be, Matt, but there is a certain degree of folks who just haven't reached out as yet, or we have reached out to them at ground level with our employees and workers who just, they don't want to come for a myriad of reasons. And I mean, you're on the front lines talking to these folks each and every day, which I so admire. Everyone has their own reasons. We don't force, we can't force, we don't drag them there, but I will tell you this, on a chilly night when it's wicked cold in northern New Brunswick, and it's wickedly more cold in northern New Brunswick than it is in Metro Halifax some nights, we will go out actively, of course, in those extreme moments.
Do you see a lot of the same faces?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Is there a high transient population, like people just passing through, or the people in the Miramichi area? Everyone knows everyone kind of situation?
You know what, man? I'm super delighted you asking that question. That's going to lead into the conversation we're likely about to have on Bathurst as well. So, transient lifestyle is one of our data points, and these numbers are as fresh as today. We have one. To answer your question, one of the 59 unique individuals would identify as a transient lifestyle. So, not as much as you would think, or not as much as I would have thought as well.
The individuals that are in the shelter, are they from the Miramichi area, for the most part, or geographically, where do they come from? Maritimes, where are people coming from?
By and large, Miramichi and surrounding communities.
Okay.
Now, if you can picture the map of New Brunswick in your mind's eye, when we say Miramichi, do we mean the city of Miramichi? Yes, but the Miramichi also is a region extending as far west as Boys Town, heading towards your way and heading downriver towards, downriver doesn't mean anything to the folks listening, east of here, down the Acadian Peninsula towards Nigawak, would identify as greater Miramichi, should there be such a thing. And I don't want to oversell it here like it's greater Metro Halifax. But there is a wider scope here where we are having some from outlying communities that are now in Miramichi. Now, they're not from Halifax, they're not from Frederick. They're in our, what's the word I'm looking for here, Madam Stutter? And
peripheral
area, for lack of better.
Okay.
Footprint.
Okay, I want to go back to the housing navigation. You have like a client landlord support. That being said, that's a wonderful service, but what's the availability for housing in the Miramichi area? Are there available places aside from the shelter for people to go?
Yeah, so I'll address that in a couple of ways. Over and above the out of the cold shelter that you and I are now talking about, Miramichi Housing Solutions does own a few other properties in our community for various stages of housing and various needs. So we're not just limited to out of the cold shelter. We do have some other properties. A little background: this started as Miramichi Youth House many years ago, I believe in the late 90s, early 2000s. Correct me if I'm wrong. That still exists. That is on the beautiful Miramichi River. That we have a couple of other houses within our community, both on the east and west sides of the city. To you, the former towns of Chatham and Newcastle, as I refer to east and west. So we do have options. We have housed 7 in the month of March, to answer your question, if that's any kind of indication of our success.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Here's something I again, just going through social media of the Facebook page for the Miramichi Housing Solutions Incorporated, teaching life skills. What are you hoping to teach? What are you hoping to equip individuals at this stage of their life in a shelter? What are you hoping to get through to them?
Great question. And Matt, I would suggest here, moving forward, because this issue isn't going away, your passion for the issue isn't going away. Maybe the next time I'll hook you up with one of our employees who can speak more passionately and eloquently about this. Well, certainly more eloquently about it, passion aside. So I do know on a day-to-day basis, and I don't want to water this down, but there are some basic skills of cooking. There are some basic skills of going to the bank and transacting like you and I would do on a fairly regular basis. Just those simple stepping stones towards independence and doing things for his or herself. And again, Matt, I'm so cautious of my choice of words here, and I don't want to belittle anything, but those little steps towards the bigger success on the path or on the journey. It's been successful. It's I get a little emotional thinking of it because we take so much for granted, the average citizen. To think that, those skills need to be retaught. It's not that they were never taught. It's just that they need to be reacquainted with that. And this is how things go now. And, I had a chat with one of the members, not to get off topic here, Matt, but I had a chat, and it'd be no different than where you are right now, or any community in Atlantic Canada for that matter, Canada. A lady who volunteers on the board of the local Miramichi Community Food Bank. And sometimes there are differences in the way they serve their clients because they know Matt is not the greatest cook, or they know Paddy may not have the tools to prepare the foods that they would have over the counter. And you take all that stuff for granted. So there are some day-to-day life skills being taught, and wonderfully so by our staff. I can't say enough about them. Here I am doing all the talking, but I'm a board member.
Well, listen, the next time that I would love to get an update from an individual who's got boots on the ground, for sure.
Listen, I have I got invited. I was the connecting dot between the local Rotary clubs. We have two of them here in the city. How lucky we'd have two thriving and vibrant Rotary clubs. I spoke at the one in the former town of Chatham, the Rotary Club of Chatham.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I want to give you an opportunity before we take a break to talk about the outside agencies. This is more than just a community project. You need outside agencies, you need partnerships. So before we take a break, just talk about some of the partnerships that are needed and that have been formed over the last year or so.
Yeah, so real quick at this Rotary thing, I was a connecting dot. I got two of the ladies that work for us, the executive director and one of our housing navigators. Look at Matt. Here's my role in that. I introduce them. I thank the Rotary for the invitation. I hand the microphone over to the two ladies, and they knock it out of the park for all the right reasons, with all the right stories, and telling of our successes, acknowledging some of our failures, because there is that too. Unbelievable. So yeah. So many community partnerships, Matt. I'll talk about coldest night of the year if you give me a few seconds on the other side of the break, and show you a little strange dynamic of what happened this year with that. But look, it takes a community takes a village to raise a community here in a roundabout way, and it's happening now. And we're top of mind. The worst is behind us. The best is about to be in front of us, and we think we are leading the way in New Brunswick, truth be told.
Well, absolutely. And we'll talk about your involvement taking over an operation in Bathurst after the break. And we're going to talk about the very successful Out of the Cold that happened just back within the last few weeks when it was cold out. Here we are, the first full weekend of spring. We're speaking with Paddy Quinn, Deputy Mayor of Miramichi and board member at Miramichi Housing Solutions Incorporated. My name is Matthew. You are listening to Truth from the Booth on Folked Up Radio. We'll be right back after the break. Talk radio with a focus. Truth from the Booth. The intention? To provide a brief glimpse into unique real-life situations. True stories. The good, the bad, and the unjust. Tens of thousands of listeners and hours of meaningful and relevant conversations. When you're ready to share your story, share it on Truth from the Booth, Saturdays and Sundays on Folked Up Radio.
Hi, this is Paddy Quinn from Miramichi, New Brunswick, and you're listening to Truth from the Booth.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, here we go. Second part of this conversation. We are just rolling along on this first full weekend of spring. Very successful, coldest night of the year, raised $30,000. Tell us about that, and where does that money go, Paddy?
All right. So, coldest night of the year is the single largest fundraising effort day of the Out of the Cold Shelter Miramichi Housing Solutions social calendar. Interesting thing this year, Matt. Last year, and don't consider this a failure as I walk you through this. The actual money raised was down a bit from last year. Okay, so right away you're like, uh-oh, what happened here? The other side of it, the social equity of the equation went through the roof. We had more teams. We had more individuals who just took a couple hours out of his or her day to come walk with us, to come hear us, to come interact with the operators of Miramichi Housing Solutions Out of the Cold Shelter. So, do you gauge success by the money you raise? Sure, I'll give you that. Is there value in folks coming saying, how can we help? I'm new to this. I'm sorry I wasn't here before. I'm here for the first time, but I will be here next year. There's value to that as well. So all in all, a successful day. The top of mind awareness, not to get, I'm laughing there because you know that term that was pounded into our heads in the radio business. That's through the roof right now. Yeah. And is there value in that? Absolutely.
Well, it's a continuous awareness campaign. So the people that come out, even if they're there for 2 hours, they are going to take something home with them that they did not know before they showed up.
Totally agree.
Very successful. Okay, do you want to button that up there?
Well, I was just going to say the story, to your point, the story needs to keep being told. The narrative needs to be out there. There's so many folks who just, and look, again, I'm trying to not offend here. There's so many folks who just don't know what we do, that we exist, that we're trying to help. And that is the same in Halifax. That is the same in Woodstock. That is the same in wherever, insert community name here. You can never
broadcast loud enough. No. But you can never. You just got to keep the message out there, and you have to use the platforms that are out there.
And you got to keep finding these partnerships. And if it's a local service club, how many great service clubs have served every community that are listening in right now? Lots of them. It's schools, it's Rotaries, it's radio stations who can share your story, have you in on a morning show over a cup of coffee and have a little chat. It's everything. There's so many moving parts.
It has to be a community buy-in. Now,
absolutely.
I know that you don't have a crystal ball, but what would you like to see happen down the road? I know there's talk about a community hub to host workshops and eventually handing out daily meals from the side door at the shelter. That's wonderful. Talk about that.
Well, that's happening right now. I'll deal with the community hub here. So zoning is in the rearview mirror. Let's go back to that real quickly. That did pass unanimously. With that zoning that Miramichi Housing Solutions sought and needed desperately to operate as they wished and intended is behind them. They are free to do so with some stipulations, as I mentioned before. So now, Matt, timing is in a strange way kind of good because we're getting into spring. We're getting into construction season, so to speak. Not that you don't do things over the winter, but it's more prevalent this time of the year, of course. So we will be afforded the opportunity to do the much needed renovations. There is a beautiful garage on this property, which by the way, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. This is a former residential house. This is where Matt and Paddy grew up, type of house. It is very much a house. There's nothing institutional about this whatsoever.
Nice.
It is a house. And it has a beautiful garage, which will allow us to extend our operations. And ideally, that will become our Out of the Cold Shelter, because this is not just a garage. This is a super garage, so to speak. So we have the community hub. We have a gathering spot. We have a spot where there'll be some training and all the stuff we just mentioned here. As far as the meals, Matt, those are being served right now out of the side window of one of our houses that we do own and operate in the city. And it's successful as well. Again, we're just trying our darndest here, Matt, to put the pieces together, acknowledging that Miramichi is in, I don't want to say crisis situation, but certainly we are trying to house the unhoused.
Absolutely, and just remarkable work. Do you kind of do you have a sense of a stat, like a running number of people in the Miramichi area that are currently unhoused? Not the people that are in the shelter, but are there more individuals outside? I guess is what I'm trying to say, Patty.
Are we housing them all at the shelter? No. Are there more people outside than are being housed? Sure, absolutely. Unfortunately, sadly, insert word there. We're not catching them all, so to speak, Matt. No.
Well, you can't because honestly, listen, Patty, I've been in Halifax coming up on 4 years. I just see an increase in the number of people, new faces on the street. I spent 21 years out in BC. Anyone who spent any time in a big city knows the potential for a lot of bad things to happen. And right now, they just there was a report out. Here it is. Like I said, the show's being recorded on a Wednesday evening. They've removed all the tents from Halifax Commons. And their tally is out of the 5 designated encampments that are still here, that are going to continue to be here. There's 30 tents and 4 trailers. My fear is that we are in this false sense of the numbers are down. It's springtime, and I'm telling you that people don't like to be in shelters. Like I've heard a lot of bad stories. They're not for everyone. So when the weather gets nice, people are going to be back out onto the streets of the HRM. I guarantee it, like clockwork. So we have a long ways to go. But I appreciate every community that is doing what they can. It's nice to see communities come together. So that brings me to the tail end of this. What is not happening in Bathurst, where the individuals like yourself and Miramichi are like, we need to take this over. What's going on there?
Yeah, so before we cross that bridge, can I just run another number or two by you?
Absolutely.
So I'm just scrolling through my notes here as I listen to you. One thing, and I did make note of this here because I wanted to both share mine and then also ask you what your experience is in the HRM. I was a little shocked, truth be told, Matt, at one of these numbers here. And of the 59 that I mentioned to you before, the 59 unique individuals, 19 are female, 40 are male. Though 13 identify as Indigenous. The one that's kind of shocked me here in Miramichi was our average age is 41, and you're midlife. I would have expected to be a hair younger, truth be told, in my mind's eye, and I may be wrong on that. So before we jump into the bouncer situation, your experience in Halifax, would that be the rough age too? Is that parallel?
It's definitely, from what I've witnessed with my own eyes, it's definitely individuals 40 or younger.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Probably individuals that identify as male more than individuals that identify as female.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to tell you something right now. What I have noticed, because I do security, I have noticed just personally that there are a lot of middle-aged men walking around with their fist clenched, like they're ready to go. So my advice to people who are out in the street, just be in the moment. Don't get distracted by your phone because, in a big city that just becomes something that someone's going to steal. It's 2025. When you're in the city, I know I'm getting a little off track, but
No,
just like small city, big city, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of, we're living in very interesting times. Sorry. So those are the numbers here from my experience. New faces every week, Patty. New faces.
Yeah, and to that point, Matt, just one other quick one here. Unsafe new arrival to area, stranded in area is a line in this data sheet that was provided by our folks. I'll read that again. Unsafe new arrival to area or stranded in area. That number is 4. So where does that number come from? Is that Matt who came from Fredericton because it's smaller and there are not more services, but you have better access to the service because you're competing for less space? We could go on all night for ad nauseum on this. Every day is a learning day in this world, in this sphere, for lack of better.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want to sound cliche here at all, but I spoke to a gentleman. Excuse me again. I was in Moncton for a show last week before, doesn't matter. Spoke to a gentleman there as I was making my way down Main Street, and Main Street in Moncton is a different Main Street, Matt, than you would remember. It's as you would expect, given what you're seeing in HRM and what I'm talking about in Miramichi. It's as you would expect, believe me. And I talked to a guy, presented well-spoken. He saw me going into a pizzeria on my way back from the Avenir Center to the Delta Beaux Arts, and he said, "Do you mind sparing a slice?" I said, "Absolutely not, my friend. You stand right here. I'll be right out." Got to talking about a slice at midnight on the road, Matt, and, not that it's any of my business, but you just get to talking. We're both talkers. We're both passionate about the situation, and and point blankly, matter of fact, he said, "How did you get here, my friend, if I may ask?" And Matt, and if I get emotional here, I'll apologize. He just looked at me and he said, "Man, I'm on a good run of bad luck."
Mm.
And my point there is that's how easy it is. Let us not forget that. It is not addictions and alcoholism or coming out of jail, or it is just, we are all but a good run of bad luck away from being exactly where that gentleman was.
Well, it's all about currency. So if you don't have money to pay to live on this planet, you're not going to have a roof over your head. You're not going to have the basics. You're going to be out on the street. And that, folks, when you're out on the street, you could have been the brightest university student. You could have been the brightest professional at whatever you're doing. When you lose everything and you are out on the street, your mental health will quickly decrease. That is a fact. Guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Did we put a button on the operation in Bathurst?
No, not at all. So listen,
I'm
going to be on a fine line here, Matt. You are well educated in this and well connected. You're reading the right information here. There is a movement here. I'm not dodging any question you're about to ask, but as I was understanding at board level, it was going to be the narrative of this rollout was going to be led by the social development in the province of New Brunswick. But you go ahead and tell me what you know, and I'll nod in approval.
Well, I'm just wondering. I'm just curious as to why your organization is so interested in taking over an organization in Bathurst. Is it because the board was not in favor of helping out the unhoused? Like, how did everything unfold? I'm not sure.
All right. So if that's your question, I can address that. Loaded question. The quick answer to what you just said is yes. They've made a pivot. They're going the other way. And, do I have an opinion on what they're doing?
So
sure.
Is there conflict between the board and the community members of Bathurst? And they're like, hey, the community, we want to go the positive way, the compassionate way. We need some help. I'm just trying to figure it out here.
Look at Matt. The way I understand it here is that association was started pre the unhoused situations are now affecting all of our communities. It was much like Miramichi Youth House started. It was to address a need at the time. Am I telling you too much by saying this? I don't think so. And if I am, I got broad shoulders. I can handle it. I think they're more interested in giving bursaries to kids who need a little help getting into school, who come from socially disadvantaged homes, and they will want to join a trade school or a university. I think that's their pivot. Are they ignoring what's happening at street level? Hey, not for me to say, but I can tell you that they're not housing the unhoused at the present, and we're about to step in and be an intermediary here. So our involvement is simply this, Matt. I don't want to say simply and undersell this. Here's the reality, and any folks that you would communicate with the HRM, it's a small world in the sense that I can guarantee you that if you ran the lady of the executive director of my organization by some person down there, they have crossed paths somewhere. at a conference, at a learning weekend, at an email. They're constantly in communication, sharing best practices or heads ups, as it were. So look at Bathurst, for folks who may not know or have forgotten, it would be about an hour north of us, inside of an hour north of us, on the Bay of Chaleur. We're neighbors. We're trying to be good neighbors. So the board is kind of walking away from the day-to-day operations. There is some new folks who are trying to get organized, Matt. And the money has to keep flowing, and the wheel has to keep turning. And there has to be an intermediary to step in here and make sure that happens. And we're offering that. We are just saying goodbye to old people. Sorry, not old people as an age, old board, waiting for a new board. And as the money comes from the province of New Brunswick or the federal government or the city of Bathurst or whatever, it can't go directly to this organization until they get settled and incorporated and file all that paperwork. So we're going to handle that for them.
Okay.
We're being good neighbors. It is born of compassion. It is born of doing the right thing. And hey, look, knock on wood, and I'm going to do that right now. We got our you-know-what together right now. We're doing okay.
Well,
we've gotten through our hurdles. Can we share our wisdom? Can we help where we should? Yes. Are we? Yes. And will we do so in the future? Absolutely, if it makes sense for us.
Yeah, no,
we're not taking them over in the truest sense. We're just acting as an intermediary until the dust settles.
Okay. Well, that sounds like another plot line to follow.
I would strongly suggest you do that. I think,
Okay.
Matt, as I recall, I think we have agreed for 90 days. And this is driven. This is driven by both the soon-to-be new folks who are about to take over the older operation. This is driven by the province of New Brunswick. They're saying, "Hey, we need help," and hey, we've needed help, and we've gotten this. It's our time to help, and gosh darn it, we're going to.
Well, pay it forward. Wonderful. That's really a fantastic story and an unbelievable update. Thank you so much for doing this, Paddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. Always good to talk to you, my friend.
Okay, Paddy, we will speak again and follow the goings-on in Bathurst, New Brunswick. Keep up the great and much-needed work. A new show next week and a federal election next month. Please vote if eligible. Again, thanks for sharing space with me and Paddy today. Feel free to reach out to me anytime about show information, or perhaps you'd like to sponsor, advertise, or be a guest on the show. Let's get you back to the music. On Canada's #1 folk station, 99.9 FM in Perth Andover, and folkedupradio.com.